Disguises don't work, they say. Well, I'm here to say that's big, dumb, stupid dummy talk. Instead of sticking out like a burnt French fry, you'll blend right in with the power of acting. But be warned, the disguise kit is not a tool for getting behind the enemy. The cloak is. The disguise is for blending in and not getting shot by sentries. Doing this is fooling no one. And also, you should turn on player models in the HUD and advanced options, as this will help you out a lot later. Now, before we can get into the acting, we need to go over a bunch of other stuff.
There's something alluring. Something
You can change disguise as much as
There goes your tower. Watch it crumble. Feel the power. Everything goes in the game. No escape.
Stop mixing up the disguise. Already disguised though, pressing B to switch the weapon your disguise is holding to the weapon spots you are currently holding. Confused? Let me explain. Your revolver is your primary, the sapper is your secondary, and the knife is your melee. If you switch your disguise's weapon while holding your revolver, your disguise will switch to holding their primary, such as the flamethrower and pyro, scattergun and scout, soldier, minigun and heavy, and so on. If you do it while holding your sapper, your disguise will hold out their secondary, which are generally the pistols and shotguns. If you do it while holding the knife, of course, melee. But that of course leads to questions. Why am I switching disguises? Well, hold that thought, because I'll get back to you on that. Next is how your identity works. When disguising, you'll take the identity of a random player on the enemy team who is playing as the class you chose to disguise as, inheriting their name, cosmetics, equipped weapons, and even their current health. If nobody is playing that class though, you'll instead take the identity of a random player outright and appear with a stock loadout. Also, when disguising as a spy, you'll also appear as a disguised spy. I know, definitely not confusing. Another thing is the disguise smoke. When you disguise, the spy throws up a cloud of smoke before he transforms. Sounds pretty normal, but do note that if you cloak right after disguising, the disguise smoke can be seen following you. To prevent this, disguise after cloak. Even being partially cloaked when you start the disguise negates the smoke entirely.
Let's see if they'll actually turn around. So half the time they don't.
Come on, almost there.
And that's why you always cloak before disguising.
Did you know you can fake reload with your primary by simply reloading while disguised? This will cause your disguise to be seen reloading their weapon, unless it's a weapon that can't be reloaded. And finally, if you're uncloaked while you're disguised, enemy players that just let spawn can see you through walls. It wasn't always like this, and it's kind of dumb, but be wary of it because stuff like this can happen.
Hey, wait. Aren't you forgetting that you can, disguise as a teammate and, fake their death using the Dead Ringer?
Oh yeah. That, yeah, it's kinda cool, but I've never really seen anyone put it to really good use. Even when faking the death of a teammate, it's kind of obvious and I
I feel no pain. Can you say the same?
There are many ways that a disguised spy can be detected beyond doubt. And as a spy, you should be wary of them. Players on the same team are able to just walk through each other, whereas they cannot with enemy players. The latter is the case with disguised spies. So if you bump into someone well disguised, it's best to assume they now know you're a spy. And only the engineer who built them can stand on friendly buildings, so don't stand on the dispenser. As mentioned before, when disguising, you take the identity of an enemy player, meaning if the player who disguised as sees a clone of themselves, they'll either have an existential crisis, or they'll know you're a spy. Sometimes it can also help to disguise as the player you kill. When you get hit by flames while disguised, the afterburn effect is immediately different. And the same goes if you get hit by the Mad Milk or Girardi debuff. Being cloaked halves the duration of Flames, Milk, and Girardi, so use this knowledge as an escape option. So, sometimes the disguise mechanic isn't perfect. Demo with a minigun, Inji with a knife, the thermal thruster is completely invisible, horseless headless pyro, and him. The weapon-related glitches can be avoided if you pay attention to the weapon your disguise has, as you can fix it by switching disguised weapons. But with stuff like the missing pyro head, you have no way of knowing when it happens, and you just kind of have to accept it. Welcome to playing Spy. So be wary of all the ways you can be detected while disguised, as if any of those scenarios occur, it's best to be able to know the moment you've been foiled. This is the fun part. All the stuff I've told you up to this point, this is why it's important. Because while it's the subtle things that give away a spy, it's also the subtle things that make him convincing.
Come to the Mathis Design Studio, the premier destination for designer furniture. See the latest trends from...
You see, your disguises can indeed fool good players, just under the right circumstances. The main trick to fooling people with disguises is to draw as little attention to yourself as possible. If people aren't paying attention to you, they're less likely to notice something is wrong. And what's the best thing for drawing attention away from you? Your team. Sure, that sniper over there may or may not be a spy, but if this medic doesn't pay attention to the immediate threat right in front of him, he's going to die horribly.
No.
But of course, whoops, the sniper does turn out to be a spy and stabs the medic as he starts backpedaling away. But let's change the situation a bit. Instead of standing there looking at his own team, the spy is running at the medic, looking straight at his back. The medic sees this and backs away from the spy defensively. By looking directly at the medic and running at him, the spy has drawn attention to himself, as opposed to here, where despite the fact he can't scope in, the medic is still fooled just because at a glance, nothing seems wrong. It's also especially effective because the spy has thought, if I actually was the sniper, where would I be looking? And of course the answer is right at the other team. Seriously, where you're looking plays a huge part into the effectiveness of your disguises. You start looking towards your own team and people just sort of walk in front of you. In fact, just walking backwards is surprisingly effective. It can be risky considering you might bump someone, but it'll work more than you might think. Also, you remember about how to switch disguise weapons? Yeah, well switching your weapon to something appropriate will make your disguise more convincing. For example, when a pirate is in a fight, he has a special weapon. But instead of like a clear gun, if you have one, obviously like that, rather than be out, and trust me, of another player, so get all the info you can about their looks, class, and weapons. Get into their mind. Pretend to be them. It's the subtle things that can convince people of your act. Just being seen switching weapons, faking a reload, using force commands, or taking a teleport to as a blow can be enough to make people turn their backs. Here's an example of me acting realistic. Here, I stab this Inji, but this demo sees me cloak, so now I know that he's coming. I huddle in this corner and disguise as sniper and pretend I also saw me stab the Inji, and I have my melee, and he force sprint while actively looking for me. There are times like this where you'll have to get creative with your disguises. In fact, calling people disguises is like a trick stab with less of the mechanical skill and more of the mind games. Often, acting can be opportunistic. There's no one way to go about it, and being erratic and unpredictable makes you harder to detect. Also, another secret strat, ask your teammates to shoot you. This is an actual strat that works. As I said, it's the subtle things that convince people. So having someone from your own team shooting at you can be enough to trick someone for long enough that they let you stab them. You can also pretend to be an enemy spy so you don't even have to ask them to. Double acting! Do be aware that disguises are used to blend in. Usually, you don't have to fool players for more than a couple seconds before making your move. Sometimes there are players for an extended period of time.
I don't think they've they don't know. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know. They haven't realized.
Bonus tip. Play around with the original reward. Since you use that ability to take disguise, you should already be in a real The displacement is different for different classes.
Time to inform your next of kin.
Soldier is the second slowest class in the game, especially since you don't have access to rocket jumping. But even some experienced soldiers don't rocket jump constantly. But at times, you will have to drop the disguise to catch up to faster targets. Pyro is typically in close range situations, and pulls out his secondary when further away from the enemy. Like I said before, pyros that have the power jack equipped like to pull it out when they're not in combat, so you can mimic this behavior. Disguising as a pyro can be really helpful for getting near enemy players, since they tend to stick with their team and it makes sense for them to not be firing when not in close range. Just be very wary of the enemy pyro.
Let that be a bloody lesson to you.
Demo is slightly below average in speed, but a lot of things that apply to Soldier apply here. Typically, you can act like you're about to shoot at something with your stickies or grenade launcher. Also, pay attention to if they're playing Demonite instead and pull out the melee if so.
You cannot hide, coward.
Heavy is so slow that it's rare to see people disguise as him. And because that speed is such a hindrance, it's best used as a wild card. You aren't going to catch up to anyone, so you really need to rely on your acting skill so that people get close to you. But since the heavy disguise is a wild card, people are more likely to fall for it if it's used as such.
You look at my tongue-tied, son.
Engineers are often seen at their nest, so it's best to act like you're running away in this case, as otherwise it can look very strange to not have a nest. If your disguise has the gunslinger equipped, you can fake being a battle NG and run around more, mimicking the active playstyle.
It's not as rewarding as a hurting.
Good medics almost always have the mini. Make your move quick. Running at people with the minigun up will make them think you're about to kill them and send them back. Medics can danger, melee, when running back. Tend to be looking for a target in the distance, but in reality, you're watching for a good moment to strike. Players very rarely notice that you're not scoped in, especially if you're standing still and crouched, so you can just sit in one place and fool players for an extended period of time. But you know the hitbox displacement? Well, the head hitbox is almost perfectly aligned.
There goes your tower. Watch it crumble. Feel the power. Everything goes in the game. No escape. Time to face your fate. There's no come on. There goes. Hi, gentlemen.
As mentioned before, when disguising as a spy, you'll appear as a disguised spy to the enemy team. Again, it's a matter of just acting like an enemy spy. They tend to have their knife out more than their revolver, and you can use it while amongst your team sometimes. But this is not an excuse for running from your lines into the enemy lines. Nothing with that opportunity is pretty sus. But not which is the and the answer is
We've all seen it. In most games, cheating is done by human players. They automate everything. Queuing for games, picking the sniper class, spamming voice chat, using aimbot to send you straight to Jesus Christ. And these bots are run by degenerates who have more laptops than sense. But it's worth noting that these bots target the casual game, not competitive. But of course, nobody plays on Valve's matchmaking. What I'm really talking about are the third-party services and leagues.
I'm sorry, I'm not good. I apologize for ego. Please forgive me. I'm just European.
These matches are planned out in advance between specific groups of players and take place on private servers, passwords and everything. And when everything is moderated, obvious cheating just gets you banned instantly. To slip past detection, cheaters need to be subtle and try to appear as legitimate players, a practice that's often referred to as closet cheating. It sounds foolproof, but there's a very real risk of getting caught anyway. When playing in a league setting, players are required to record their matches. TF2 includes a built-in recorder, letting players create demo files. And if you're suspected of cheating, you'll need to hand over those files for inspection.
No, unacceptable.
I could continue on with the discussion about hacking, but I'm sure it's been talked to death by now. And I think people are starting to get tired of Valve's apathy towards the issue. Instead, I want to focus on something that's a bit more interesting. Rule breaking. If you're running a league, it's very important to have cohesive rules for players to follow. A quick disclaimer though, I won't be covering all of them. It's a big list of rules and I don't want to be here all day, so if you are looking to join a league, this video isn't a substitute for reading the rules. You should probably do that yourself. Okay, we good then? Let's talk exploits. Normally, competitive servers run class limits. For example, in most competitive formats, teams are not allowed to have more than one demoman. But if 2 or more people respawn at the exact same time, whilst switching classes, they can respawn on their new class, bypassing the restriction. And since TF2 spawns players in groups, called respawn waves, this isn't really hard to accomplish.
No, unacceptable.
If you use the retry command in the developer console, it will reconnect you to the server. This is useful if, say, your internet drops out while in the middle of a match and you need to rejoin. Using it for that purpose is totally fine, so what's the problem? Well, it ignores respawn times. If your respawn time is particularly long and your PC's loading times are quick, it can genuinely be faster to reconnect to the server. Abusing this is banned. Here's an interesting one, the reverse quantum crouch. For a bit of backstory, there used to be a bug called the quantum crouch, but it was patched. This reverse variant requires a specific setup. While standing, use an explosion to shove yourself off the ground. Make sure you don't jump while doing this. Before you land, start holding the crouch button. You'll now be crouching, but other players will see you sliding around in a standing pose. But what they can't see are the hitboxes, which are still in the crouching position. This has a few weird results. Sentry guns will assume you're standing, but because you're really crouching, they just end up missing. Because of issues like this, Any exploit that messes with players' animations or their hitboxes tends to be banned on principle.
No!
A funny result of this is that the reference pose bugs are banned too, even though they're pretty harmless. You can't shoot your weapon while in a reference pose, so it doesn't really impact anything. But there is a variant of this bug that does allow you to shoot enemies. The Contracker exploit. This item is so buggy that it kind of warrants its own video. But this isn't that video, so let's just focus on whatever the heck this is. Normally, opening the Contracker menu just opens the menu. However, if you do have a Contracker equipped in your action slot, your character will do a neat animation where they take it out and look at it. If you close the menu, another animation will happen where they put it away. It represents what you're doing in the game, which I think is pretty cool, but it's also really buggy. I mean, look, I'm just spamming F2 and I'm sliding around. I haven't even gone to which is, in order to tell when the menu is open, the game uses a console. When the menu is open, the balance is when it's closed, it's unfortunately, I'll not the best players for changing the command at will. And since console commands can be bound to keys, we can make this process even easier. And this means I can access other menus while the Contracker is active. For example, the loadout menu, where I can remove the Contracker from its slot. If I set the value to 0 after doing this, yep, that's the glitch. It offers a few distinct advantages. For example, Pyro players will get pretty annoyed at the lack of reload animations. After all, a common tactic for reflecting projectiles at close range is to look at the enemy's reload animation, then reflect when the reload is finished. But if the player is sliding around with the Contracker glitch, the reload animation is obscured, making it very hard to tell when the next shot is coming. Okay, so the new update fixed the loadout switching exploit, so it's no longer possible to get stuck in the animation forever. But unfortunately, the other problems I mentioned still exist, and players are still able to mess around with the console commands. Here's a few other things I haven't mentioned about the Contracker. When the command is set to 1, you're not able to reload or fire your weapon. This doesn't have any real benefits when used with most weapons, but it greatly helps with the Devil's Bazooka, an odd weapon that reloads before firing as opposed to after. It can only hold 3 rockets at a time. Trying to load a 4th will result in an explosion. This means you can't hold all 3 rockets indefinitely, since stopping the reload will just result in the weapon firing. But if we use the iPad, you can't fire or reload the gun while it's active, letting you do this. You can even do it while rocket jumping, letting you delay the barrage until you're right next to an enemy. While the Steam Deck is active, you can't walk. You also can't airstrafe. Strangest of all, Demo Knight's charges don't let you move at all, meaning the Nokia 3310 is responsible for players like this. I wouldn't become too reliant on this though. They've already made patches to stop you from opening the menu while taunting, so they should also do the same for charging and for reloading and for firing. Let's do a lightning round of banned exploits. Going out of bounds. Resupplying through walls or ceilings. Shooting or killing players during setup time. Taunt killing through walls. Shooting through this gap on Swiftwater. Spamming this console command to let you see cloaked spies. But I'm only just getting started. When it comes to TF2's classes, the developers made plenty of mistakes. I'd like to start with a big one. Okay, here's another one. Pyro's flames are dependent on velocity. In other words, if the pyro is moving quickly, the flames will move quickly. But in TF2 logic, velocity isn't the same thing as speed. It's possible for these two things to be sync from each other. If a player gets stuck inside an object, they won't be able to move, but they can still build up velocity by doing explosive jumps. Do this enough times and your velocity will start getting quite big, which means when you finally decide to fire your flamethrower, the flames will go very far, despite the pyro being locked in place. The Phlogistinator is a flamethrower with a special ability. Fill up this meter and you can activate critical hits. One of the things that balances this weapon out is the forced taunt that you do when you activate the crits. It basically warns the enemy team of what's to come. The game also gives you a bit of invincibility during the taunt, so that you don't die while using it. However, there are a few ways you can cancel the taunt early, which means you not only get to use the crits early, but the invulnerability effect remains. If you're still curious about this one, Lister has an entire video about it. There's a banned exploit where you can keep the thermal thruster's stomping ability even after switching to a different secondary weapon. You also keep the reduced fall damage. As engineer, you're not permitted to put any buildings in places where they can't be destroyed. The one exception is blue spawn on CPU Steel, because this is an intended feature of the map. When it comes to sniper, crouching. Okay, I should be more specific. If you crouch while scoped in, your view will go up and down in a straight line. Weird thing is, Sniper's crouching animation actually moves his head slightly to his right. In certain places, snipers can peek around corners while keeping their heads safe behind a wall. This can be an issue in sniper duels for obvious reasons.
Get on the demo.
I really wish I weren't here right now.
ETF12 made the decision to ban this exploit, but RGL allows it. When asked about it, they stated that it would be a bit difficult to enforce, not really being a big deal. I don't mean sniper, so I'm not going to interject with my own opinions here. But while we're on the topic of bugs that are allowed, I'd like to mention wall bugging, a technique where players can stick to certain walls. This is usually done by soldier players. If the enemy team isn't looking up, they can dive bomb onto the enemy medic. So what makes one exploit okay, but the other not okay? Beats me, but I guess it just comes down to what people enjoy. People tend to hate the flog, let's be honest. Even a flog goblin like myself can understand that. TF2 has a rich modding history. Look at Game Banana for instance, you can find a lot of interesting things. Whether that be new weapon models or new sounds. Some of these are pretty odd though. Like, why? Why does this exist? Why do I want it? Oh fuck. A console command known as svpure allows server owners to block certain mods. To keep things simple, let's just say that a value of 2 blocks all mods, and that a value of 2 is a competitive standard. But if that's the case, how is every competitive player running around with a custom HUD?
Oh my god!
Wait, what is that crosshair? Anyway, the game makes an exception for custom HUDs. Players are deliberately allowed to use custom HUDs in all servers. To achieve this, Valve whitelisted certain files for being modified by svpure, meaning modified with There's just one problem. These folders don't just contain HUD stuff. There's a bunch of junk in here, like these files, which contain weapon names. I wonder what would happen if I messed around with, say, this one. Thankfully, weapon stats are server-sided, which means when you join a server that's not yours, you'll just be given a regular rocket launcher with default stats. But there are a few lines in this file which aren't stats, but are just cosmetic things, like explosion effects. So if I change this, I can customize the explosions however I want, and it will be allowed in any server I join. These explosion mods are actually pretty cool, and they're actually allowed in almost all competitive leagues. They do technically give a visibility advantage since the default explosion smoke is pretty annoying, but I think people just really like the customizability and so it's been allowed. I've been using this orange flash in every single one of my videos. If you really want to give yourself an advantage, you should turn your attention to muzzle flash mods. You can get a bit creative when it comes to revealing players' blind walls, such as by making a really big effect or just straight up using a wall hack here. I mean, look at this, it even persists through Cloak. Spy just doesn't win.
Hey, those are stink lines.
Because they smell.
Yes, I see.
And don't worry, it gets worse.
Alan got good at money. Now he can be a little bad.
I'll take it.
Looking good, Alan.
No fair!
Look at these files. What do you think they're for? Sound data. Inside, we can find different parameters for volume, file path, and so on.
You're getting erased!
Oh no.
Despite being well documented for over 4 years, and despite legal leaks going out of their way to contact Valve about it, Valve just hasn't done anything. It's still in the game.
My favorite class is Dota 2.
And I haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to sketchy mods. For example, custom HUDs can be modified in a way to remove the sniper's scope, giving players more visibility. I will give credit though, Valve did try to fix this one, only for a workaround to be found one day later. This was 8 years ago, and Valve still ignores it to this day. Look at these box shadows, achieved by editing the HUD to load a font that doesn't exist. Actually, the probably raised me questions about that. Almost any model in the entire game can be removed by modding.
Unacceptable.
That said though, the no hats mod is allowed.
Acceptable.
And there are a few other mods that are considered fair game. There are a lot of things I've omitted for the sake of this video's pacing, but I think I've made my point. This game's a bit of a disaster. I mean, it's a lovable disaster, but still. Even if Gabe Newell, Thanos snapped all of the bots and hackers out of existence, there'd still be all these other ways you can cheat just by modifying the game, or doing a bunch of exploits. And I've not shared anything brand new or groundbreaking here. What I've done here is just read a bunch of Wikipedia articles and transform them into content. The fact that some of these exploits are nearly a decade old is just an embarrassment for Valve. But I suppose there's a bright side to everything. Valve decided to accept community-created bug fixes on the workshop, which means if Valve isn't going to go out of their way to fix these decade-old bugs, maybe, just maybe, we can. Wait, none of them got added?
Does anybody out there read me?
This is getting a little crazy.
Stay with me.
Welcome back.
You sure you don't want to come in? No, I...
Against all the mercenaries. Produce. They will send unto you. Only them. Shoot and stab until it is done.
with very little effort. A flamethrower covers a large area near them, and it only takes one of those particles to set you on fire. Once you have been set on fire, not only will your health drain, but the effect is visible to other players, instantly revealing your disguise and making you visible while cloaked. Of course, once the fire knows your location, they can track you down and kill you incredibly fast with the sustained and easy to aim damage of the flamethrower, and your low health. Since most of your kills are the result of backstabs, you find yourself getting very close to the enemy, and that's where the effective range of the pyro lies. Not to mention, he possesses unlockable weapons that can set you on fire from a distance, or help close said distance. So when it comes to dealing with pyros, one of your biggest priorities will be in order to survive against a pyro, we need to learn how to avoid them, and how to get away in the case you do get discovered. Since the flamethrower is almost always the way you'll get discovered by a pyro, it's especially important to avoid it. A good way of avoiding it is to learn about the danger zone. The danger zone is in an imaginary circle around the pyro that roughly gauges the range of its flamethrower. If you are in the danger zone, you're one quick spy check away from being discovered. But if you're outside the danger zone, you literally cannot be set on fire.
I meant by the flamethrower.
Getting used to the size of the danger zone comes down to experience, but it's worth noting that the danger zone lies behind the pyro's own movement, because the flame particles aren't affected by the pyro speed, it actually has slightly less range in the direction they're moving. And the reverse is exactly true. Also, the flamethrower, like most weapons in TF2, has a distinct noise. So put on some surround headphones and keep your ears open, as you can often hear a spy check coming before you even see it. In fact, pyros that spy check too much can often be inadvertently easier to avoid due to you always being able to hear them. Another part of the pyros is...
Hey, I'm a pyroman watching this video so I can put spies back.
critical. As mentioned before, being able to hear a pyro and see them is a good way of avoiding them, but it also helps you gauge how spy check heavy the pyro is. Try to find paths that the pyro isn't covering and simply stay out of the zone. Pyros have orders in place in the spy check and the order that they do so. Understanding those patterns can allow you to slip past. But of course, most pyros aren't that dedicated to killing spies, as they have other purposes as well. Projectiles, protecting teammates, getting crit boosted in your own rampages, air blasting people off cliffs, you know, pyro stuff. It doesn't mean they won't spy check, they'll just do it opportunistically, usually when they're not doing anything else. The danger zone rule applies to these pyros as well, but you can still more easily get away with using the danger zone as long as you're aware of what the pyro is currently trying to do. It's essentially the same thing of avoiding the crossfire of other classes. And start running. The main way to get away from pyros is what I call the 3-step plan. 1. Run away. 2. Get rid of afterburn. And 3. Lose them. When running, face away from the pyro. You are slightly faster than the pyro, but running backwards slows you down just enough to make the pyro faster than you. And besides, like I said before, the flamethrower is loud, so you'll have a good idea of what the pyro inside will anyway. Once you are out of flamethrower range, the two best ways to get rid of afterburn quickly is by picking up a health pack or cloaking. Picking up a health pack gets rid of afterburn instantly, and if you watch the spy psychology on Cloak, you'd know that being cloaked makes afterburn wear off twice as fast. As a side note, you can get rid of afterburn by jumping into water, but it does temporarily make you wet, and the subtle dripping effect from it may reveal your position on the cloak, though not all players notices. Once the afterburn is gone, you can use the pyro by either moving slowly or erratically to lose track of you, or continuing to make your distance. Since you're no longer on fire, it can't see where you have to go. If you go with the first method, it's advised to instantly change the direction you're moving after you get rid of the afterburn to throw them off. Breaking line of sight with the pyro as quickly as possible helps ensure they won't set you on fire again. If they do manage to set you on fire again, restart from step 1. Once the pyro loses track of you, make as much distance as you can, as it will buy you time until they've realized you've got away. If you go with the method of simply making distance, continue using your superior speed to get away, and be prepared to dodge potential flares. It's often a good idea to run straight into your own team, especially a friendly engineer nest, as it's known that pyros have some difficulties. Sentries. If your team is really close by, you can even skip the first 2 steps when being discovered and go right to step 3. Well, most of the time when trying to kill a spy, pyros like to use the air blast because it kind of helps him get away. Just be very wary of this. The pyro often chooses violence, but at times, so will you.
Spy has a gun.
Gun is a very good option against pyros when you are outside the danger zone, and shooting the pyro takes advantage of their biggest weakness. Yes, while they can't hit you with a flamethrower, they can hit you with flares or shotguns at long range. But flares are projectiles that can be dodged, and while the shotgun is hit scan, it consists of a spread of multiple pellets that suffer from damage fall-off. while the revolver is a single shot that suffers much less from said fall-off. The point being, the further you are from the pyro, the bigger of an advantage you have against them, as your ranged options are superior to theirs. Speaking of another thing you can do about the flames, that one knife. You know the one. While it was mentioned in the knives video about how it helps you getting away from pyros, the 1 second of full fire immunity can also help you in combat, as the pyro literally cannot damage you for 1 second as you pump him full of close range lead. Of course, you do need to actually hit your shots in this situation, or else you'll join your knife in being melted. However, the Spicicle isn't the only knife that has value in combat, as you can, trick stab. When you're in the danger zone and the pyro has too much health to gun down, landing a trick stab can save your life. Pyros like to run into you, but that also means they can run into trick stabs. Though this video also isn't a trick stab tutorial, if you've got no other option, it works as a last resort, even if you just throw yourself at the pyro and hope you land a stab in the confusion. But note that trick stabs are inconsistent, as you may mess up the execution of one, and if the pyro sees it coming, they can just simply not walk into the stab. Pyros that think they got the jump on you can often be surprised by a quick reaction on your part, or by mixing the usage of your gun with your knife. If the pyro's health falls below 41, and you're struggling to hit the final shot, you can run at them and finish them off with a butter knife. So when fighting a pyro, make full use of your arsenal. But it's about time we talk about theirs. The backburner simply deals critical hits if hit from behind, so the strategy of turning and running away can be safely used once you make some distance. The backburner does have a slightly different sound to the stock flamethrower, but if you're caught off guard and die to the backburner, take note of the pyro using it for next time. The main draw of this flamethrower is its faster switch speed, so pyros who use it Dragon's Fury, the danger zone no longer exists. Well, yes, the Dragon's Fury boasts superior range, it uses single-shot projectiles and not a spray of smaller ones, meaning the pyro can't just roughly guess your location, they have to correctly guess your exact position to find you. And even if they do hit you, the afterburn only lasts 2.5 seconds, which lasts half that if you're cloaked. So yeah, it's the worst flamethrower for spy checking, and most pyros using it will usually only go after you if they know where you are. The flare guns are the only way a pyro can set you on fire outside of the danger zone, but they actually have to hit you with it, meaning it's not nearly as effective for spy checking. If they're using the base flare gun, avoid getting hit by it while on fire at all costs, since it crits burning targets. If you get hit by the first shot, get rid of that alcohol ASAP. If they're using a scorch shot, be slightly wary of the small explosion that can set you on fire. If they're using a detonator, they can really just set you on fire. And the man melter, you almost never really come up against it, so yeah. The thermal thruster can be great for closing distances. However, it takes a long time to switch to it, launch, then switch back to the flamethrower.
my walk speed override! No fair!
This gives you plenty of time to change directions and lose the pyros while they prepare to chase with the jetpack. It's also not very effective indoors.
This is
Okay, I'm with the pyros on this one. This weapon just sucks outside of man versus machine, where
I need
that happens.
feel my walk speed override!
But as a spy, just avoid the gas cloud and you'll be fine. This melee is typically used for close range combos. Pyros like to pair this with the before mentioned aggressor due to the faster switch speed. So a pyro using that flamethrower and engaging you at close range has a pretty good chance of having it equipped. Saving that for a different video. Okay, so you know that thing where you can jump in water and get rid of afterburn? Well, unfortunately, pyros only tend to use this in maps that have a good counter to water, and aren't very good at hiding the fact that they have it. That's your guide to the pyros as spies. These tips are by no means foolproof, and you can see dark pyros, but the match up that is entirely now, it's about time to play that song a lot of you have been waiting for.
Oh, touching the sentry.
It just delete. So, what would Spy be without his knife? Well, you'd have my running joke that I'm saving for later in the video. But my point is that the knife is a key tool in the Spy's arsenal. What it enables is his ability to insta-kill. But of course, there's multiple different knives you can use, but to understand the unlockable ones, we first need to understand their base form. Stock is the knife you'll start out with. And like many stock weapons in Tier 2, it's very good. When people keep asking me what the best knife is in all situations, the answer is always stock. It gets the job done without any gimmicks. The base damage of the knife is 40, however when hitting a backstab, the target dies instantly, regardless of their current health and opening. The only things that can block a backstab are razorback and pistols and such. But what counts as a backstab? Well, it's the entire back half of the enemy. But do not see! The back half is based on the tools of the player, not their model, as some animations will slant the back in certain ways that people use it. Whenever using course, occasionally the hit detection can be a bit funny and not grant you backstabs which should have landed.
That's back on
What? What?
This is the reality of playing Spy. The Big Earner lowers the user's max health to 100, but on kill it restores 30% of your cloak, as well as a 3-second speed boost. Mechanically, the easiest of the non-stock knives to understand, though all its uses aren't immediately obvious. While that cloak regain doesn't come into play nearly as much, the speed boost is the main draw of this knife. Whenever you get a backstab, regardless of the knife you're using, you generally need to decide between going further in for more kills, or getting out. Because of the speed boost, both of these options become much easier to execute after a kill. You're either zipping between unaware targets, or getting in and getting out towards the nearest garlic bread.
Wait, this isn't garlic bread?
Chain stabs become much easier with this knife, as most players don't expect the Spy to be that fast, but again, it's a matter of choosing whether to stab everyone or GTFO. But now we need to talk about that downside. Sure, losing 20% of your total health may not sound like much, but there's a reason light classes have 125 health and not 100, as it allows them to barely survive a powerful hit from most weapons. When you take that health away, suddenly you're able to be one-shot by a lot of things. Essentially what this boils down to is that you need to avoid detection and crossfire before landing a backstab, as there is notably much less room for error when doing so. To summarize, it's weaker before you land a backstab, but stronger once you do. This knife is for if you're dying piracy. However, do not be mistaken, it does not guarantee your survival, it only aids it. If hit by fire while held, you gain 1 second of fire immunity and 10 seconds of afterburn. But this melts the knife in the process. Backstabs also turn victims to ice with a distinct sound. So again, that's melting. It only activates if hit by fire while the knife is held, and when the knife melts it becomes completely immune, putting it on a 15-second cooldown that can be sped up by amateurs. If only there was a way to deal damage without the knife. Oh yes, Spy has a gun! This is probably a good time to mention that you can shoot people with your gun. And said gun has this range. The knife isn't your only weapon, especially when people are looking at you. Anyway, wait. So that 1 second of fire immunity may not seem like much, but things can happen very fast in TF2. And that 1 second may be enough for you to escape the range of the pyro with your slightly superior speed. Plus, the afterburn immunity persists for a good amount of time. The biggest issue here though, is that pyros can set off the Spicycle on purpose just to prevent you from getting a backstab. So while they have a harder time killing you, they have a much easier time preventing murder. That isn't done by them at least. Also that eye statue thing. It may not seem like much, but that distinct sound alerts players to your location, and the ice statues tell players that there is a spy nearby, and it really does not help with their paranoia. But speaking of the knife that excels in preventing paranoia, the ultimate stealth knife, but also the complex one. Upon landing a backstab, you instantly disguise as your victim, as well as the kill being completely silent, at the cost of plus 33% cloak drain rate, and the disguise kit needing and consuming a full cloak meter on use. The basic rundown of this knife is that it highly rewards more careful spy players, as if used right, this knife can hide the fact that you're even present from non-victims, while your actual victims will become paranoid out of their minds. Let's break down the on-kill effects. 1. You will instantly take the disguise of your victim with none of the particle effects. 2. The victim will not scream, making the backstab near impossible to hear. 3. No notice will appear on the kill feed for the enemy team. 4. The corpse will very quickly disappear. And 5. If they stab the victim, the beam will instantly transfer to you. This entire process is so fast that you retain your cover in between backstabs, to the point you can sentry guns will fail to detect a backstab with its knife, making it safe to backstab anywhere that isn't actually sentry. However, the other powerful trait of using disguise is that once you get killed, you'll most often be in a realistic position for that class to be in. People also don't expect players that they just cleared to suddenly get replaced by a spy. In this clip, I stabbed a sniper this demo cleared. He thinks I'm a non-sniper, and then this scout appears in front of me. We can assume the scout double jumped before entering our view, and that the demo saw it, so he knows that the scout cannot be a spy. However, since the scout is also fooled, I get a backstabber. I round this corner back into the demo's view, but now I'm disguised as scout. The disguise is infamously known for being the easiest to detect due to the incorrect speed. But because the demo doesn't realize this isn't the same player he just saw 2 seconds ago, he doesn't even pay attention and proceeds to walk right into a backstab. I'll make it into one! There's so many weird psychological effects that this knife has. Like when someone pulls out a spy after a backstab, people don't expect to see a disguised spy. And because people are so used to hearing backstabs, they just don't turn around after a backstab like they normally do. They often won't even know you exist unless they're dying to you. Basically, this is an overcomplicated way of me telling you that this knife excels in maintaining your cover. But we've barely touched on the downsides. The increased cloak drain requires more effective cloak management on your part, meaning this knife isn't super beginner friendly. However, this downside can be negated by equipping the L'Étranger. The disguise kit also requires and consumes an entire cloak meter upon use, meaning if you disguise manually, you'll need to pick carefully, as you can't change that decision right away. However, this also has a workaround, as doing this while standing in spawn won't consume the cloak meter. This by no means nullifies it, but saves time if you know. That being said, what this means is that you have to have a much more considerate playstyle. You need to be more careful with your cloak, and use the disguise kit with purpose. But, if you are careful, it will keep you hidden.
You're good at business? We're good at business banking. Wells Fargo.
What's this?
It's complicated.
Can you feel the crispy tuna and the garlicky goodness? Savory sesame.
This knife essentially amplifies the traits of the big earner. You have even less health, but more survivability after a backstab. Upon backstab, you absorb the health of your victim, with the excess health being turned into overheal. But your maximum health is reduced by 55. For the mathematically astute among you, you may have figured out but once you backstab someone, you steal their health. This is based off the health of your victim, but no matter what, you gain a minimum of 65 health.
One more left!
However, most of this health will be turned into overheal, meaning it cannot be recovered by health points, and it decays over time. However, the decay rate of this overheal is affected by math. So overheal decays based on the maximum health of the user. Normally, overheal balances out risk and reward are greater. If getting that first backstab is becoming a struggle, you're better off swapping to the big earner or stock. The big earner leaves you open to one-shots, but empowers your ability to escape or get chain stabs. The kunai amplifies the strengths and weaknesses of the big earner, and is a big risk to use. The Spicicle helps you survive pyros, but allows pyros to melt your knife, and makes players more aware of your presence. The Your Eternal Reward excels at maintaining your cover, but only when you play thoughtfully and smart. And Stock is the best all-round knife for all situations. You may take your pick, but they all share one common ability. The ability to stab.
What feels better, clean or your dog? Your dog won't like the answer. Against all the mercenaries, two brothers can hire. All the weapons mankind can produce, they will send unto you. Only them. Shoot and stab until it's done.
Let's do that again sometime!
Pyros are great at detecting spies, with very little effort. Their flamethrower covers a large area near them, and it only takes one of those particles to set you on fire. Once you have been set on fire, not only will your health drain, but the effect is visible to other players, instantly revealing your disguise and making you visible while cloaked. Of course, once the pyro knows your location, they can track you down and kill you incredibly fast with the sustained and easy to aim damage of the flamethrower.